Hi everyone, I'm Carly of Gnarly Carly Gaming, and not only is it Women's History Month, but today is actually International Women's Day, and to celebrate, I have two game recommendations for you. When I first conceived of doing a video for Women's History Month and International Women's Day, I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to take it. Part of me wanted to do something very serious in a game that really reflected the power and beauty and achievements of women, and the other part of me likes being a little cheeky piece of shit, and so I wanted to do like a silly video for Women's Day, because both are wonderful ways to celebrate different facets of the experience of women. And so I decided to do both. I have two recommendations, and one is a very serious recommendation, and the other one is a very seriously fun game, but is cheeky and satirical and a funny celebration of all that power that women can wield. And because it is officially releasing today on International Women's Day, I'm going to start with the silly bit. This game is very satirical, very silly, but definitely showcases the power of women. The game that I want to recommend is Deadly Dowagers. Deadly Dowagers is a brand new 2 to 6 player game from Sparkworks, and it truly is Sushi Go, but for murder. Each player plays as a middle-class woman from Victorian England, and essentially we want to build ourselves up in the world. We all have our sights set on marrying the Duke and becoming a Duchess. We are middle-class women, and our inheritance isn't enough to pay that dowry. Yet, utilizing serial marriages and serial murders, we attempt to amass wealth and slowly but surely work our way to be able to pay the dowry to secure the Duke as our spouse. However, rumors spread and a trail of dying husbands does not look too good, and so you have to manage your infamy throughout the process, otherwise the Duke would never agree to marry you, even if you had the funds to pay that dowry. What all of this looks like is essentially at the beginning of the game, you will start off with your small inheritance, as well as a brand new working class husband. There's a variety of different occupations they can have. All of the husbands kind of give you a different ability. Some of them can be promoted into more prestigious positions, but the bulk of the gameplay is drafting cards, akin to Sushi Go, but murder themed. And what you'll do is basically you'll get 5 to start, you'll pick one, you'll pass, you'll pick one and pass until you have 4 cards in your hand. These will give you methods to murder, such as poison or a hat pin or even a gun. And if you're lucky, maybe even natural causes that your husband can die from. All with various amounts of infamy they give you for having a spouse die that way. You can get a card in order to marry effectively, and then you get a variety of cards like lands and other investments that will help you build up wealth with the spouse you currently have. After everyone's drafted, players basically simultaneously can play any advancement cards they'd like, and then you'll go on to kind of an action phase where you can play other cards from your hand and either kill a spouse or marry a spouse. You are sometimes able to do both, but never in a graceful way. If you marry someone and kill someone within a same short time window, it could be a little more sketchy. And so you'd have to elope or strangle your husband in that case. You can't use a more discreet form of murder or a proper wedding if you're doing it on the same turn, and those rank your infamy up way, way worse than if you're able to kind of pace yourself in the process. All that being said, you basically have a phase for drafting, you have a phase for actions and new spouses, and if at some point during that acquiring of new spouses, someone's able to pay the dowry of the Duke and has low enough infamy that the Duke will say yes, they win the game. And my goodness, if this game is not just delightfully brutal, it actually made me feel kind of good about the people I keep in my life, because when we were first getting this to the table and trying it out, there was 4 of us, and we all kind of went in a very like wholesome and nice way to our husbands. We were all like, okay, well, I had a husband, for instance, who was a professor and he could be promoted to a dean. And so I was like, you know what? I'll spend an action rather than offing him the first round, I'll promote him. And okay, so then we get to the next round and I was like, okay, like where can I do? And I was like, I could promote him again, but that costs money and I'm trying to make money. And like, what are my other avenues to power and wealth? And I'm looking around and we were just helpless, just utterly helpless. And so we all kind of had this realization, we're like, oh, like, murder is our power. Murder is our power. We have to kill our husbands. And so we all did so at a slightly different pace, but it was kind of a jarring thing in a game to realize you're like, nope, that is something that we have to do. We don't have much power. We don't have many options. And this may seem like a weird choice to emphasize on Women's History Month or for National Women's Day. But to be thankful for more means of moving up in the world than just murdering my spouse is pretty dang cool. But also it's a very silly game. It's a satirical piece. They talk about that in the rulebook too. It's based on true events of women actually murdering and for reasons similar to this. But it's a silly game of women moving up in the world in the most brutal way. And the fact that they chose to release it today is just like a little funny. But the game actually progressed really nicely. It was a really nice drafting game. We all were kind of neck and neck in securing different spouses. What is interesting when I said the women are powerless is all of your special abilities came from your husbands too. Each of the ones that you could build up to. So you can start off with working class, get a noble, that will allow you to expand more land, but all of them had different like special abilities. One of them didn't care if you had an affair, which could earn you some side money. Others helped you in other ways. And so you really do have this sense of like powerlessness except for the wealth and the man that you're attached to. And that's kind of a heavy theme, but it's all very light and draft and playful. We all enjoyed it in our own way. I think there's a little more like meat to it and strategy than some of those other lighter drafting games. And so I enjoyed it for what it is, but I also think it's a interesting piece in terms of understanding women's power and its progression in time. I think it's just a lovely game. You shouldn't take it too seriously. No one is condoning murdering husbands. I certainly am not. But it is a very silly game if you'd like to celebrate Women's History Month and International Women's Day in a little bit of a cheeky shit kind of way. And it is brand spanking new, so if you want more information on it, I will put a link below where you can check out more about the game. I do think it's really light and lovely and wonderful. It's also a small, very portable box, which is super cool for something on the go and playing up to 6 people with lots of simultaneous play. So it's very quick, punchy, and rowdy. 30 minutes of lots and lots of murder. Okay, so now we move on to the more serious recommendation. Not that I don't seriously recommend that. I do. It's a very punchy, funny game. But the next game is something that is truly a celebration of women and a beautiful, beautiful one at that. The next one I'm going to recommend is actually a family game. So the less cheeky murder-filled and very wholesome, but with enough little bit of strategy to make it really shine. I'm going to talk about HerStory from Underdog Games. HerStory is such an incredibly special family game. It plays for 2 to 5 players in a little over an hour, give or take a bit, depending on player count. And in the game, each player takes on the role of an acclaimed author working on a book about all sorts of remarkable women and their achievements throughout history. Whoever finishes their 8th chapter first will end the game, but not necessarily win it. Different chapters that are completed are worth different values, and after some endgame bonus points that can be earned throughout the game, you'll sort out who is actually the winner, whether that's the person who triggered it or not. So how do you get to 8 chapters, and where are these points coming from? So essentially, there's a game board that's laid out in front of you that has 5 women cards on it at any time. Once one is basically bought off the board, another one will come and replace it. And all of these are different famous faces of women throughout history, and their stories are on the back of the cards, which is super, super charming. But essentially, on the front of the card is the women themselves and the research required to basically finish their story and add it to your book. In the game, you'll amass research tokens, and once you have enough to fulfill the cost of the card, you can turn it in as an action on your turn to acquire the card and add it, scoring the points associated with the card. Many cards will also give you extra ways of scoring points throughout the game, special advantages like discounts on research later, and just fuel your strategy. Some even have catch-up mechanics if you're trailing behind. So turning in research tokens to acquire these is the primary way of getting all of those points. But the other two major actions are both acquiring those research tokens, basically taking a turn to take one of the research tokens with its symbols on it, or else you can draft a chapter, which is just reserving a card saying, I don't have enough to pay for this now, but I'm going to put it in my drafts, scoring me a couple of points now, but also making sure that the thing I'm working towards, I'll get whether or not you can beat me to it. It's kind of that, I'm not sure if I want all of these things right now, but I'm going to make sure that I can get this eventually because it works really well for me kind of thing. And honestly, that's pretty much all of the game, are the three major actions. You're going to research to acquire tokens, spend them to finish chapters directly from the board or from your drafts, or you're going to draft a card to reserve it, and you can only have 2 reserved at a time. That is the general flow of the game. But what's so special about this game is, in part, its production. It is incredibly beautiful. Everything just feels so well considered and special, for lack of a better word. The art for the women is amazing. All of their stories are on the back of the card, and you can kind of learn about women as you go in through it. And everything just has such a nice touch to it. There's a neoprene mat for the board. The pieces all feel like clean and polished and just, yeah, special is the biggest word that I can use for it. And as an avid gamer, I will say the strategy is on the lower side. It is very much more of a family game than a strategy game, but there's still like a healthy bite of strategy. Certain cards combo really well together. And they can build up in really special ways. There's, like I said before, there's one card that actually provides like a catch-up mechanic to it, that if you're in last, you scored extra points when you achieve that card. So drafting that and making sure you fulfill it can actually kind of steep and push you ahead. But honestly, I do think its biggest appeal to me is just the stories that it tells. I actually learned this game at Tantrum Con. I went to a con and the designer was there and she taught me. I'd been wanting to learn it, but she taught me while I was there. And there was actually a dad who came up to us who didn't know who Danielle was, didn't know that she created this game, and basically just was like asking how we liked it and was telling us how much he loved it, that he played with his daughters and it was just like a special experience to them. And it was so funny because he just, like I said, he had no idea that the designer was there, but he saw people playing this game, and this game had touched him and his family so much that he felt the overwhelming need to share that with us as just strangers playing the game in like the hallway at a convention. And how special for Danielle, but it was also just like really special to see and witness how much a game can touch someone, and help them connect them to their kids and help their kids connect to all sorts of beautiful and intelligent and powerful women throughout history. And so, yeah, that kind of experience that can be fostered through this game just makes this an obvious choice for Women's History Month. And it's actually on sale for Women's History Month. I think they discounted it like by 60% or something wild, which is also incredible. And so I can put a link below to that sale. And it's just a really light and wonderful game. Both these games that I suggested are pretty much on the lighter side, but are really wonderful tributes to women's power and just women in general. This one, though, it's in the very serious way an important thing to exist. I always say that I wish that little Carly had games. I'm always jealous of people who were playing games with their kids because I didn't have games in the same way when I was younger. I had like family games that people know, like the classics, but nothing like this. And I think these stories are important, and the stories of women are important, and sharing them through play with kids and family can be really special. So those are my 2 recommendations for Women's History Month, and also today for International Women's Day. We have Her Story and the really brutal, deadly Dowagers. I have a soft spot for murder, I have to say. I mean, most of you probably know that. Most of you found me through Blood on the Clock Tower, which is all about murder. So this is a way you can do it as a powerful lady. And this is where you can learn about powerful ladies who did better things than murder. But those are my 2 recommendations, one serious and one silly, and I will see you all for the next video.